Hey guys, it's Alan here. Welcome back to Death Masterclass. Today we're on Chapter 4, Spellementing, Advanced Spell and Deck Setups and such. So, here we go. Before we begin, this is more advanced stuff and will require knowledge of what Spellment paths do. We will do a quick rundown of certain terms that you should know before we discuss advanced deck setups with Spellements. Also, be sure to follow the optimization we did in Chapter 3 to help set up your ideal advanced deck setup. Some spells can be used as a follow-up to a previous gambit. We will discuss that in the next slide to add some extra effects and can create some fun strategies. Firstly, the terms to know here are Gambit, when you take a certain hanging effect and turn it into something totally different, or to deal extra damage, or even create different hanging effects. Clears are usually removing negative effects from yourselves, or it can be removing something of the enemies to do something else as well. These are the two prominent terms in the game for most spellmented cards. You will see Echo on balance spells, but that is a school-specific trait based on the magic wheel, having balance as sort of the jack of all trades, master of none. So, what? So, magic wheel. What is that? Well, there's a magic wheel before you. You have storm, fire, and ice on the outer ring, and death, life, and myth on the inner ring. So, how I will go over this is, as you can see, death is all about negative charms. And recently, negative auras. This was a recent addition. Whereas and it is good against storm, positive charms, and life, healing over time, while it struggles against myth and ice, which is shields and negative trap. And then, of course, traps. Or curses, as they're called nowadays. But, we're not going to call them curses. Death is best complemented by fire's usage of damage over times to best counteract myth and ice. And we will go over spell weaving, and we will talk about these combinations later down the line. But I thought I would go ahead and tell you that death is best complemented by fire's usage of damage over times. And anyways, we can go. So, now that we know what the school's identity is on the magic wheel, what will our cards do? They will do one of these things based on the understanding of the school identity. Healing over times for something to our benefit, clearing positive enemy charms for negative charms, clearing positive charms for our own positive effects, gambiting our own blades for negative charms on our opponents, gambling negative charms on opponents for positive effects on us, gambiting something on ourselves to gain a positive effect, clearing positive auras for negative charms, and then lastly, gambiting negative auras for positive effects. If you want to pause and read these, you can. So, which cards to upgrade for these effects? For these extra effects. Certain cards are definitely worth spellmenting into their bottom path form, while others don't really have much effect and can be left alone, or just go the damage route if you want to, with one special exception, and you'll see it when we do our little ratings here. All the cards covered in this chapter are worth for the extra effects and can spice up gameplay and make a difference in fights if used properly. When using these gambits and clears to their full potential, you can really bring out the school's expression, make some incredible and sort of clever strategical moves in battle that you may impress some of your more baseline, more newer friends that are maybe taking this journey with you. You can sort of show you a little bit of advanced knowledge to sort of impress them. I digress. But we will be rating them in tiers from C to A based on how well we can use them in normal PvE combat. This is not a PvP tier list. Starting with our C tier Spellment bottom paths, being Skeletal Pirate, Ghoul, and Dark Sprite. Now, if I had to put them in order, I'd say Skeletal Pirate is probably the middle of the two. Dark Sprite is the worst, and Ghoul is the best. Because obviously Ghoul having that 55% charm is very nice. A chromatic shield really doesn't matter most of the time because you're going to be focused more on killing stuff anyways. And then, of course, Skeletal Pirate, you're never really going to worry about people and bosses putting up healing overtimes. So you don't really need to work them that well, as you can see. You can experiment with them, but don't really recommend it. But layer in the game as you go. These won't be well implemented and is best used for PvP or advanced content. You can use these in conjunction with B tier ones to experiment with how they work. So, with that being said, let's move up to the B tier Spellement bottom paths, being Wraith, Banshee, and Skeletal Dragons. These spells can be used, but sometimes won't work too well in context of work too well in the content we are doing. My bad, not context. You can decide on that and experiment with these better than the C tier ones. Most of these can also be used for other gambits in the same battle. Banshee is the most prominent one, as you can take off enemy blades and give them to yourself. Put up negative charms. You can take 3 blades using Wraith and put 60% damage weaknesses on your foes, which is very good. Especially if you are fighting maybe like a storm or a fire and you want to maybe mix it up a little bit by putting a Wraith in there. And then Skeletal Dragon, I put here as sort of, you can use it, I wouldn't recommend it, but it is decent on the damage front if you want an 8-pip damage single hit. You could also use King Artorias, but either way. B tier Spellments are also the most versatile when used in conjunction with A tier, negative charms, prominently from Wraith and Banshee. Skeletal Pirate is here, and the Dragon, well, not Skeletal Pirate, Skeletal Dragon's here for, obviously, the damage, but, either way. We'll move on to our A tier, which are going to be Avenging Fossil, Grim Reader, and Vampire. Vampire being the negative charms. You take 2 negative charms on your opponent, and then you go ahead and you turn it into negative weaknesses against the enemy. You have Grim Reader, which gives you 240 weaknesses of a school on your enemy, or a chromatic, so whatever school they are, it'll put that type of weakness up. And Avenging Fossil, where you can gambit up to 4 negative charms, and for each one you will get a power pip back, and then 890 damage. These will always be more useful than their normal top path counterparts, and are best utilized when benefiting from their B tier Spellements. Yeah. You cannot go wrong with these. Upgrading these on the bottom start, and will be the best to use. There are, of course, going to need a lot. You're obviously going to need practice. Especially the Avenging Fossil one. That one's probably the most complex of the 3 that we have here, because Avenging Fossil, you need to have, you can have up to 4 negative charms, but you can still use it if you have, 2, because you're still getting 2 power pips back. Or if you have 3, you get 3 power pips back. So you can almost refund the amount of power pips back that you used for the spell if used properly. So, as you saw, there are a couple spells that are not here. The first one, Scarecrow. This is the big one in the room. As you noticed, Scarecrow was not put into any of the tiers, and here is why. This bomb path is specifically best when used in advanced content like raids, PvP, and challenge mode, and it won't work the same as it normally does in PvE if you use the top path. That is because Scarecrow on the bottom path will be splitting that 510 across multiple enemies rather than just across the board. So it will decrease in damage for every consecutive enemy hit. That's why you use the top path Scarecrow in your PvE content, because it will retain its high damage per pip numbers. And these are the last ones that we did not add to our list, but they are okay to skip until advanced content, that being Gizmo's Curse, Winged Sorrow, Call of Cthulhu, Snack Attack, King Artorias, Wobbegong Frenzy, Pluto's Peril, Scion of Death, Anubis, Gravestorm, and Dr. Von's Monster. These paths have really no use in combat while questing, so it can only be really considered when starting advanced content before upgrading these to your specific B paths if you so choose. These are not Spellement cards, but these are spells that are great to use for setting up your gambits. It gives you a lot of flexibility with when you have these copies of cards in your deck. Threefold is overall better than Spirit Blade, but you can still use the other non-death blades of Spirit Blade to still pull off some of the gambits that you have. So for after reading all that, now that we know this, here's what we can do with that. We understand the fundamentals of gambits and clears and have an idea of which B path cards we should use based on the tiers, and here is what we can create. And this is just sort of like a cookie cutter sort of you can mess around with this setup. So adding threefold Spirit Blade to use cards like Wraith, Vampire Avenging Fossil, using cards like Banshee and Life Fights to get an infection up to set negative charm gambits. Experimenting with certain gambits and clears to utilize our magic wheel identity. And you can also make some great fun decking gear setup synergy to really show your spell school and school expression. And it's all in your hands to make your setup unique. Like I said, you can make a sort of cookie cutter idea of maybe having a Spirit Blade, couple threefolds, couple Spirit Blades, and then have stuff like Wraith, Vampire to cover if you want to put some weaknesses on certain bosses, or even an Avenging Fossil, so you can end up getting, outputting major damage while also getting back your power pips. That's always worth doing something. Or, utilize Ghoul and other things, because there are some fun stuff you can do with some of the other spells that you don't have spellements for, like Monk of Mourning, or something like, or even using other spellmented cards from other schools can also give you some things as well. Okay. So, anyways, what to take from this chapter? Well, you have plenty of spellment options and are free to experiment on which ones work best in each parts of the game and which ones you wish to use. You don't have to use any of them. You can use all of them, or you can use none of them, or you can use a mix of some. It's all up to you. You can learn how to better use the school identity to build a foundation for later experience and understand how gambits and clears work before you really get into advanced forms of combat and content like raids and PvP. And then, once again, we are trying to make sure you have the information to build a setup you want to build and take through the rest of the game, instead of taking, and I think we've covered, and I've said it multiple times through all these chapters, we're trying to get a setup that feels unique to the user, where you can still utilize and have fun with, somebody else's setup. Sometimes you just want to do something that you create yourself, and you can do that using these Death Masterclass chapters. But yeah, I think that's the last slide. Yes, it is. Okay, so I don't really have much else to say because these are more advanced stuff, and obviously it's not stuff that you should take into account. But when we get into stuff outside of the Death Masterclass, I will do some other tips and stuff and slideshows and stuff to sort of give you an idea of like questing stuff, experimenting with spellements and stuff like that. But yeah. Besides that, I'm glad you guys are continuing to take a look at these and read up and educating yourself on getting that foundation you need to understand the deaf school. Hopefully, when you look at deaf from people that do like certain like tier list on like which school is the best and blah 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 blah. Um, we're not doing and trying to prove that Death is the best school in the game, because that really is most of the time subjective, depending on who you are. Um, but yeah, hopefully these chapters are and teaching you something that you may have not known, or is helping you better understand what certain things do or what you should do in game. Because we're just trying to coach you and teach you the ins and outs of certain things and what you can do and take from just reading up, you know. Because yes, you can find a guide of, how to quest to max level in less than in a month or a week or 2 weeks or whatever. But what does that teach? Does that really teach you anything about the game? I think the only thing it really would teach you is just how long the game can take and how grindy it can be. Whereas utilizing the tips and tricks from the Death Masterclass, you're not only getting knowledge of Death School and how it works and what you can do with it, but also giving you an idea of finding ways to spice up your gameplay so it doesn't feel like an entire grind or a slog or whatever it may be. Yeah, and once again, I thank you guys for stopping in, taking the time to sit down with us, learn a little bit more about the Death School on Chapter 4. For next time, I think we are on Chapter 5. Yeah, we're almost there. We got 2 more chapters to go. I think Chapter 5 is spell weaving and miscellaneous stuff. So that's going to be fun because spell weaving is probably the most newest form of content and stuff to know about in the game. Once again, it will be utilizing the magic wheel, aka Rochambeau. But yeah, we will be doing in that chapter talking about spell weaving, what spell weaving school is right for death, and what you can do with spell weaving schools. With that being said, I thank you guys again so much for supporting this, and if you need some actual coaching outside of the Death Masterclass, be sure to contact me on Discord if you so wish to. Or even leave a comment if you want some questing help or some questing coaching or some death coaching, because I'd be happy to oblige. So, yeah, I thank you guys once again. I will see you guys when we get to Chapter 5 of the Death Masterclass for Wizard101.